Have you ever wondered how pros make their nature photos look so cinematic, almost like they are jumping out of the screen in 3D? I have been very fascinated by photo editing and always wanted to master the art of making images pop, to bring out the emotion and the depth in the photo. And honestly, I just love the whole process. In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how I edit my photos, and hopefully you will get some inspiration from it. Let's dive in. Okay, so we are now in Lightroom and I have chosen this photo of a swan that I photographed about a month ago. I think that this photo will fit well in this video, so let's begin. So I have edited a similar photo of the same swan, which is right here, and I think I want a similar style, but this photo is more green than the other one, so it will not have the same warmth temperature to it. The first thing you want to do is to decide the composition and the crop of your image, and don't be afraid if this step takes a lot of time, because this is how you will see the photo, so you have to be sure that you have the right composition that is the best. I want to have the water level straight through the photo, so I'm spinning the crop here to try and match the water level. We can see that we have a reflection in the water, and I want to have, actually we can make that reflection like in the center of the photo. We want to have something that is special in the photo that grabs the attention of the people that are looking at the photo, and I think that this will do. So now let's go to the next step, and that is to add light or brighten up the light source that you have in the photo. So the first thing we have to do is to find out where the light is coming from. How we are doing that is to go to the normal sliders that affects the whole photo, and we're going to light and exposure, and we're going to drag it down, and then you see that the spots that are pretty bright is still going to be visible, and then you can also find out where the light is coming from. You can see here on the swan's neck or throat that it has a bit of shadows on the right side, not much, but a little bit. I would say that the light is coming from above or a little from the left. We're going to use the masking tool. So first we're going to create a light source in the photo, and we're going to use a radial gradient for that. And we're going to put it right here on the top of the photo. You want to do it as natural as possible, so that's why I'm putting the radial gradient here. I think that is pretty good. We're going to put a little exposure on it. You can see what happens if you are dragging the other sliders to see how it affects the photo. And I think that is a pretty good first step. And now after that I'm going to this one, linear gradient, and now we are going to make some shadows and a vignette around the photo. We want to put the focus on the swan. We're going to use a linear gradient to darken down the sides. So for example, here in the foreground, it will be pretty natural to drag down the exposure here, and it also put focus on the swan, which is the main scene in the photo. We're going to put a little more linear gradient, so for example here in the corner, and also in this corner, but I don't want to put it like, I don't want to put the linear gradient like this, because the sun or the light is coming from that direction. So, and that will also be unnatural if we're doing that. So I'm going to spin it a little up and have it in this corner, and you can see that it just puts the focus on the swan. You can see here before and after. Now this part here is very bright, and if I have some spots that is extremely bright, I usually are dragging that down. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is to sharpen the photo, but we want to do it in a natural way. So we're going to use the mask once again. I'm going to use this mask. So this mask figure out the subject in the photo, the main subject, which is the swan, and it did a pretty good job, and not here. So we're going to subtract and use a pencil so we can brush away this, because we don't want to sharpen the background. We're also going to add a little mask here in the scene, in the water, because that is also in focus. And now we're going to go all the way down to details and higher up the sharpening. Well, we can also use the effect slider. So for example, the texture here. I think that looks pretty good. But you can see here on the top of the body, the highlights are so bright that we can't see any details in it. So we're going to use a radial gradient, mask this part and try to add details to it. This slider doesn't do anything. We're going to use the effects slider. I think that is pretty good. And now we want the photo to look a little more clean, and I love to do this with all my photos. So I'm going to duplicate and invert this mask. So I'm only going to affect the background in this mask, and I'm going to, you can see here that we remove all the noise in the background when we are doing that. If we're going too much on these sliders, you can see that it creates a bright line around the swan, and we don't want to have that. So we're just going to do it a little bit in both of these sliders. You can also use the texture slider to drag that down, and also the clarity, but I'm not a big fan of that, so I don't want to use that. You can see that now it has a soft look to it, but the swan is very sharp and I like that. Now we're coming to my favorite part of the editing process, and that is dodge and burn, which is a technique that I learned about a year ago, and it absolutely changed my process of how I'm editing my photos. To you that don't know what dodge and burn is for technique, basically you are painting in the highlights and the shadows in the photo, and when doing that you can also create details in the photo and also make it look more cinematic. Okay, so let's begin. I use the pencil for this technique, but I know that some people use the radial gradient also, and that works if you like it. I think that this photo is pretty bright, so I'm going to start with the shadows in this photo. Okay, so when doing this technique I often prefer by starting with the main subject, in this case the swan. So we are going to just paint in where I think the shadows should be. When I'm doing this technique I often do it in steps. So I do a lot of masks and I'm just changing a little bit of it, and then I have more control of it, and I can also make it look more natural if I'm doing it in steps. You can see that the whole vibe of this photo completely changed. So if we're going to the original photo, you can see a pretty big difference, but now when we are going to do the highlights, it's going to be an even bigger difference. So now the same thing again. We're going to start with the highlights on the main subject. I know that light is coming from above or a little bit to the left, so I'm always thinking about that when I am painting in the highlights and the shadows. You see here now that the photo looks a little more cinematic to it, but we are not finished yet. I think it would be pretty cool to add a light source on the top there the light is coming from. Maybe we can put the light on a swan. By doing that, I think that we will drag the attention directly to the center of the photo and the swan with its reflection. We could also try to create some light steals. I think that would make a pretty cool look to it. You can see here the before and after by the last changes that we did of the background and also the light steals that we added. So here is the before and here's the after. The light just pops a little bit more and it looks a little more cinematic. So I'm pretty happy with the results. We can go to the next step and then we can look at the photo and see what things that we can change to improve it. So now I want to change the colors of the photo, and I like to do the colors separately. And for example, if I want to enhance the green colors, I am only enhancing the green colors. These sliders right here, that is the sliders that affects the whole photo. Okay, and I am happy with that. Okay, so I added some bright spots in the eyes to make them pop a little bit more. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the results. I'm going to do some last small changes to it to just make it look a little more my style. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the result. Maybe I took it a little too far with the contrast and black shadows and so, but I think that it really pops, and maybe you can use some of the techniques and get some inspiration. Alright, that is it for today. I hope you got inspired and learned something new today. And hey, if you have any tips and tricks about editing, feel free to share them in the comments. I would love to learn from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you in the next one. Bye.